Phil, how long does it take you to record and edit all your videos?
What do you mean edit? It's all done live. Nah, jokes. Normally I'll record Phil 1, do a couple of takes of each line, and then I'll record Phil 2. And I've usually been thinking about the script all week. For a 3-minute video, it might take me a couple of hours to edit. Depends how crazy the video is. Whether I've done a music trivia show or used Jamie Oliver in my video. Hang on, just wait here a minute. I've just got to run to the toilet and I'll grab your drink bottle for you. I'll be quick. Kerry Griffel, what are you doing here?
Hey Phil, I have a question for you.
Okay.
I want to know why donkeys are not sacrificial animals in the Bible.
Well, I love your podcast, by the way.
And I'm also curious about zebras.
Actually, the correct pronunciation is zebra. Possibly because I think they were unclean. But really, a sacrifice is a food gift that's sent up in smoke to God. And well, donkeys aren't food. I wonder too if, because donkeys were working animals, so Numbers talks about the red heifer ritual, where they had to select an unblemished red heifer that had never been yoked. So I'm assuming that they were making a distinction between an animal that had been used for heavy work, as opposed to a holy animal that's set aside for a holy purpose.
Thanks for your channel, and I hope that Phil isn't too disappointed in not being in this video, but I'm sure you'll make it up to him.
He'll survive. He's got the day off. See ya. Oh, hey Josh.
Phil, I have a question. Why does Leviticus say that blood makes atonement in Leviticus 17:11, but in Leviticus 5:11 through 13, a poor person could offer flour instead of an animal sacrifice for sin? How does atonement work without blood? Thank you.
That's a great question. So normally the priest is the one who pronounces atonement or makes atonement for the people. And like you said, in Leviticus 17, talking about the lifeblood of an animal, God says, I have given it to you to make atonement. And 3 or 4 times in Leviticus 17, God says the life is in the blood. And God says, I've given it to you on the altar to make atonement for you. But in Ezekiel 16, God says, when I make atonement for you. So God is actually the one who makes atonement. So I think you've hit on something important. Does God need blood to make atonement? Or can God do anything he wants? You're right that atonement is made if a person just brings grain and a grain offering. But also in Numbers, Aaron takes incense and just by standing in the middle of the people, he makes atonement. So I think atonement is pronounced by an intercessor, a priest acting on God's behalf, but ultimately God is the one who makes atonement. And no, I don't think God needs blood to make atonement. If anything, I think the blood is pointing to God's desire for an unblemished life. I gotta keep going. I'll see ya. Amber.
Hey Phil, this is Amber. Why is it that only land and air animals are sacrificed in Leviticus and not creatures of the sea or the water, like things that breathe with gills and only things that breathe oxygen with lungs?
Again, great question, and I'm not even sure I know the answer. So Jesus' miracles included multiplying loaves and fishes, and he ate fish for breakfast, so there can't be something unclean about fish. Perhaps, this is only a guess, a sacrifice was partly about the connection between heaven and earth, and the smoke ascending into the heavens. There was like a spiritual connection as the offering transformed into smoke and ascended into the heavens. So if the sea is associated with the underworld or the place of the dead, maybe water creatures were too close to the place of the underworld where the dead go. So actually, there's a story in the book of Tobit that's really cool, where this guy goes down to the river to wash his feet in the river, and then suddenly a large fish comes out and bites him on the feet. And the angel is like, don't let it go, grab onto the fish. And so then the angel says, Cut open the fish and take out its gall, its heart, and its liver, and keep them with you, but throw away the rest of the fish. And the young man was like, what do I need the gall and the heart and the liver of a fish for? The angel says, you keep the fish's heart and liver, you burn them to make a smoke in the presence of a man or woman afflicted by a demon or evil spirit, and every affliction will flee away and never remain with the person. So perhaps there's something about a liver of a fish or a sea creature that repels demonic spirits, where a pleasant aroma attracts God or attracts spirits, and an unpleasant aroma from a fish repels spirits. I don't really know, but that's a really fun question. All right, I got to keep going. See ya. Oh, hey Sam.
Why was a woman unclean longer if she gave birth to a daughter than to a son?
Okay, thanks Sam. That's a really hard question, and I'm not sure I know the answer to this one either. I have a daughter and I have 2 sons, and there was nothing obviously more or less unclean between their births. Lately my daughter does like to call me a pig, but I don't think that's related. So in some Jewish traditions, your hands were impure after touching a scroll of the scriptures. So there may be a time of impurity for touching something extra holy. That may not be what we're talking about here. A boy is circumcised on the 8th day and a girl is not. So maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe the time of impurity is cut short, pun intended. The Book of Jubilees has a super interesting theory that Adam was in the garden and he had to wait 80 days before Eve was created to be with him. So maybe that helps. But actually, I don't think we really know. Baby girls sometimes have a discharge of blood, so that's a possibility, but sorry, can't help out more with that. I gotta keep going. I'm busting.
Phil, I am not a Levite. Am I allowed in here?
This is sacred space, so
I mean, how far in can I go?
I'm not sure I understand. Do you have a diagram?
The Tabernacle has 3 spaces. The outer courtyard, the holy place, and the Holy of Holies. In order to enter each one, you go through a curtain. How many curtains can I go through?
Well, as a non-Levite, Leviticus says you should bring your offering to the entrance of the tent. So you can enter the outer courtyard, and the outer courtyard is where the bronze altar is. But you couldn't go into the holy space unless you were a Levite who was not unclean.
Also, while I'm here,
While you're here, go on.
I brought this animal. Do I just hand it over to the priests? I mean, how much of this process do I participate in? Giving offerings and sacrifices as a non-Levite. How much do I participate beyond just bringing the animal?
Are you sure you want to know?
Let me know.
He's gone. That was awkward. Right, so whoever brings the offering is the one who slaughters it. If you brought the offering, the knife is in your hands. I imagine the priest would supply the knife because it would have to be consecrated and holy. But if you brought the offering, you're the one holding the knife. And then the priest does the rest. The priest is basically the butcher. He'd cut the offering up into its portions. The liver and the kidneys and the fat would be placed on the altar and sent up in smoke to God as a pleasing aroma. And the priest himself might get the breast or the thigh. And if you brought a peace offering, you'd take the rest home to your family, you'd throw a party and you'd have a feast. So it looks like you're eating roast lamb for dinner tonight. I hope you've invited a lot of friends.
about the purpose of incense?
Smoke and incense was, and still is in many churches, a common way of communing with the divine. So smoke and incense is associated with the spiritual realm, and it's a way of sending up, or imagining that you're sending up prayers and requests to God in the heavens. Actually, I made a video on incense recently, so you can probably go and watch that. It's all about incense. I really need to keep going. Amber.
Yeah, so if we're supposed to read Leviticus as part of the narrative of the Old Testament, how does that work? It's not a story.
Great observation. But actually, there are two stories in Leviticus, two narratives that sit once on either side of the Day of Atonement, which is chapter 16 in the middle. So once where Nadab and Abihu profane holy space when they bring profane fire before the Lord, and then once when the blasphemer profanes the name of Yahweh. But you're right, other than that, the whole of Leviticus is set in one location at Mount Sinai. So just like the Day of Atonement is in the center of Leviticus, where a goat is sent out into the wilderness, Leviticus sits in the middle of Exodus and Numbers. And both Exodus and Numbers are both narratives set in the wilderness. Exodus is a wandering in the wilderness, Numbers is a wandering in the wilderness. So actually, Carmen Imes has shown me how Exodus and Numbers have a staggering literary design where the following events occur in mirroring fashion on either side of Mount Sinai. So 6 times on either side they make camp, twice on either side they have no water, once on either side they receive water from a rock, once on either side they are given quail and manna, once on either side the angel of Yahweh appears, once on either side they fight the Amalekites, once on either side the Israelites lament leaving Egypt, once on either side there's a leadership struggle, and once on either side a Midianite relative helps. So actually these events in Exodus and Numbers, they act like a picture frame drawing our attention to the image in the middle, which is Leviticus, which is set entirely, you're right, in one location at Mount Sinai. So Mount Sinai must be important, and Leviticus must be important too. Maybe probably even more important than Ezekiel. I gotta keep going. Sam, again.
What does water symbolize in Leviticus?
Good question. So water was basically part of a cleaning ritual. The entrails and the legs of a sacrifice were washed with water. And if a utensil had touched something unclean, it got rinsed with water. So often if someone was unclean, they just washed themselves or had a bath in water. Like if you just had sex, you both had to have a bath. And sometimes they wash their clothes with water. And actually, here's a bit of Bible trivia. Running water, so moving water from a stream or a spring, in the Bible is called living water. So when you read about someone having to wash in fresh water or running water, it's literally living water. Okay, I've really got to run. Bye. Sorry I'm late. You won't believe what just happened.